Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I wish I was there. It's always far more inspiring to be in three dimensions within a room full of comrades, but I can feel your presence in my soul. Comrades have just come back, just arrived back from Munich. You may have heard that Munich is, as we speak, under the occupation of a gigantic police force. There are, I've never seen so many policemen in my life, and I grew up in a military dictatorship. And the reason for that is because Munich, as we speak, during this weekend, is hosting the Munich Security Conference. It should be called the Munich Insecurity Conference. It's a bizarre bazaar of warmongers and the most lucrative weapons armaments trade is taking place as we speak under the umbrella supposedly of peace through strength. And this whole notion that only if you are armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons can you even think of peace. And in the midst of that, a number of us, 3,000 or 4,000, from not just DiEM25, but from various left-wing communist organizations and a very strong contingent, I have to say, from the Congo, and another even stronger contingent representing the Palestinian resistance. We marched under very difficult conditions. The police were confirming with their behavior that Europe now it has already been taken over by a new form of fascism, which is not actually that far off from the original form of fascism. If you saw the way in which they intimidated very peaceful demonstrators, if you saw the way in which they behaved like an occupation force within their own country, there was actually even a very sort of amusing reverse Anschluss. You remember Anschluss when Hitler took over Austria, because the Bavarian police force thought that they needed reinforcements, so half of the Austrian police force had crossed the border to come to Munich against 3,000 of us. I don't know whether you're interested in this, but I think that in the spirit of solidarity, and just because I'm French from that, I should bring this to your notice and to your appreciation. In that meeting, I wanted to do what I am interested in also doing tonight here in your midst, just to remind ourselves that Europe, and I include Britain in this, I'm not talking about the European Union, I'm talking about Europe now as a continent. Europe, once after the end of the carnage of the Second World War, the peoples of Europe had a dream. That dream is now gone. It wasn't a dream of a common market, of a single market, of competitive markets, of a common budget, of a single currency. No, we had dreamt of Europe as a peace with justice project. And that dream, as I said, is gone. It has evaporated in the cold, hard light that dissolved it. Around 18, 19 years ago, starting in Wall Street, then the city of London, then Frankfurt, then Paris, we had a majestic, it was so awful that it was majestic, banking crisis. And that banking crisis, to cut a long story short, in your country, in my country, in Germany, across Europe, led to austerity for the many and to manic money printing for the very, very few. And that was the end of any notion of even a prospective social democratic kind of justice. And it was the beginning of Europe's long winter, a long winter of stagnation, deindustrialization, of a vicious class war by the very few against the many, everywhere, from Ireland to Britain to France, all the way down to Greece and to Cyprus. And then again, you can take the other diagonal from Poland all the way to Portugal. And before we knew it, when you combine austerity for the many and money printing for the few, you end up with a mind-numbing level of inequality, you have discontent. When the left has been betrayed by the Labour Party, by the Social Democrats, by my party, my government betrayed the people on the night of the very courageous referendum on the 5th of July 2015, which led to my resignation. When all this conspires to create new facts on the ground, before you know it, fascism and war are again in the air. In the context of the security conference in Munich, yet again, you had the defense minister of Germany repeating the same rubbish that Keir Starmer says, that Putin is the new Hitler and Europe has to stand together, and that we peace activists and anti-war demonstrators are Putin's handmaidens, we are Putin's useful idiots, his appeasers. And, from the platform that I had access to briefly in Munich yesterday, I asked a question. I addressed the question to Mr. Pistorius, the defense minister of Germany, to the president of the European Commission, to Starmer, to the warmongers internationale. And I said to them, okay, let's say that Putin is Hitler. If Putin is Hitler, why are you not sending allied troops to take Moscow and to drive him into a bunker where he should commit suicide, or drag him out to Nuremberg? Don't you realize how cowardly it is to keep sending weapons to the exhausted Ukrainians and expect them to take Moscow or even the Crimea? Because the truth is that our rulers do not think that Putin is a new Hitler. When my friend Jeremy Corbyn and I were demonstrating in 2001 outside the Russian embassy against Putin and against his crimes against humanity in Chechnya, when he killed 250,000 people, Chechens, in order to solidify his dictatorial regime in Moscow, we were being accused of being eccentrics, of being radical fools by the very people who were doing business with Putin and for whom Putin was their blue-eyed boy. No, they're not interested in democracy in Russia, or they're not interested in the plight of the Ukrainians. They're in the business of a never-ending, hugely lucrative for them war. That's what they want. And having failed to invest in the technologies of the future, especially the green technologies of the future, in Britain, in Germany, in France, in Italy, in Greece, across Europe, having failed to upkeep, not even invest for new social infrastructure, but to upkeep the social infrastructure that we had after the post-war brief experiment with social democracy. I'm talking about the National Health Service, I'm talking about social care, I'm talking about universities, I'm talking about state schools and so on. Well, they missed out on the technological revolution which is taking place in China. Our social infrastructure and fabric is collapsing, and the European ruling class, and here I, of course, include the British ruling class, which is so magnificently being represented these days by Keir Starmer. They're banking on guns and bombs, on drones and iron domes, and they want to spend your money, our money, the money that people out there are struggling to make in order to make ends meet. They want to spend that money on these guns and these drones and these iron domes. And if this means endless deaths in the killing fields of the Ukraine, they don't give a damn. It's really very simple. In the last year, there have been two major developments which I think we should focus on as the fundamental difference between a year ago and today. The first one is that the International Criminal Court has acknowledged the genocide of Palestinians. This is an important move. However discredited international law may be, the fact that the International Criminal Court has indicted Netanyahu and his former defense minister is not to be scoffed at. It's a major development. Of course, the second development is that Donald Trump has re-entered the White House, openly advocating the completion of the Palestinian genocide. Now, you may say to me, like a German journalist from the state television channel ARD, when I was being interviewed a few days ago, he said to me, Mr. Varoufakis, what's this fixation with Palestine? Why can't you just deliver a speech without ending up talking about genocide and the Palestinian situation? Well, two reasons. First, because if this were 1938, and today was the morning after or the evening after Kristallnacht, we would have only one duty, and that is to protect and to defend the Jewish people from the Nazi pogroms. Well, in 2025, we have a similar duty, to defend the Palestinian people from genocide. But there's the second reason too. There's another reason. The other reason is that what started in Gaza about a year and a half ago is not going to stay in Gaza. Such brutality cannot be contained, especially when our leaders gave the supremacist settlers the green light to commit genocide with our weapons, weapons produced in our countries, with their flag projected on parliament houses across Europe, on the European Commission buildings in Brussels. The Zionist ideology of supremacism has reinforced supremacism in Britain, in Germany, in Greece, in France, in Italy, in the Netherlands. You can see this in opinion polls all over the place. And we will see it again next Sunday on election night in the Federal Republic of Germany, which is not insignificant. So this is why some of us, for the last 9-10 years, have been organizing across Europe to create a new sort of international. I was asked to say a few words about DiEM25, the Democracy in Europe movement, our socialist pan-European transnational movement. What is novel about it is that we're not a confederacy of different nation-state-based parties. Once we formed it and we started joining it, we joined as comrades. Some of us happen to be Greek, some of us happen to be British, some of us happen to be German or Dutch or Portuguese, but we do not operate as a representative system of the Greek section and the German section. We run as a transnational unitary movement across Europe. We don't believe in the borders of Europe, certainly not of the European Union. We go far beyond the European Union. We have organizations in Palestine, in Israel, good comrades in Israel. We have comrades in Argentina, in Vancouver, in Canada. We have a very lax understanding of what Europe is. And of course, we work with organizations and governments in Latin America, in Indonesia, and so on. When I say governments, of course, I only mean governments like that of President Lula in Brazil or President Petro in Colombia. And the reason is because you can see that the bankers and the fascists are operating on a transnational basis. They are not operating on a nation-state basis. The amount of solidarity they show to one another, it is quite astonishing. There is no degree of racism. When you see bankers together, they may come from Nigeria, from Switzerland, from Germany, from Greece, from Britain. They're like brothers. We of the left need to put into practice our internationalism. I would even say our transnationalism, as DiEM25 does, because 80 years after we defeated the Nazis, 80 years since the people's representatives gathered in the United Nations to proclaim never again. Well, it is happening again. And this is why our Palestine features prominently in our hearts and in our souls. And it is happening again with our government's blessing and with our social democratic governments, our labor government's blessing. They allow, and they allowed, the international law to die on the soil of Palestine. And therefore they killed international law everywhere. Because international law either applies to everyone or it applies to no one. This is why we're here. This is why we organize. Because austerity, war, genocide, ethnic cleansing, white supremacism are one issue. They're one topic. You cannot deal with one part of this agglomeration without dealing with the agglomeration as a whole. We need to rise up to organize not only proletarians, but also the precariat, which is ballooning these days. We need to organize the people who are under the spell of what I call cloud capital, the people who work on Amazon's labor market. There are 85 million people who work on Amazon's labor market in conditions that even Friedrich Engels, when he was writing the conditions of the working class in England, would have despaired at. And we need to tell our governing parties, the fools in government, who behave as if the despicable crimes of the Holocaust can be washed in rivers of Palestinian blood, who behave as if the authoritarianism of Putin is going to be stemmed by piles of dead bodies of more and more Ukrainians, who think that the issue is balancing a budget and treating, as Rachel Reeves does, the Bank of England as sacrosanct, and continuing to pouring money, taxpayers' money, into the Bank of England in order to pay back bankers for services that they never provided to the British public. We need to tell...
Wrap up now, please. Sorry.
You want me to stop? Okay.
Oh, don't stop immediately. Just come to action.
Okay. Well, let me just wrap it up by saying we're here to stop them. We're here to seize this. We're here to seize the day today, so that tomorrow we can dream again of the possibility of peace with justice. Thank you.
Thank you.